All right, thanks guys for coming. We'll begin in just a minute. We're getting the live stream back up. Make sure we've got a few online folks that want to join, and we'll get going. Oh, we didn't get to the front row. I was trying to see if anybody would come to the front. Apparently. And I could slobber a little bit, so I'll scooch back and make sure I don't hit you. No, I think you're safe there. I've got myself back a little bit farther. All right, welcome again. For those of you, if anybody's online, thank you for being here. We're going to be going over our life group leader training, and that's why my microphone's on and it's kind of loud. We're making sure we record with the folks online, and also we want to record this so that we can show it to folks that aren't able to attend. So that's why the microphone's going. I don't usually like to boom at people that are like right in front of me, but we're going to make it work today the best we can. Now we're missing a few. We might have a few online. Marion Hune, I think, was going to be here and is not here. And then Ellen. And then there was, who else was there, Becca? Was there somebody else? Oh, Margaret. And she's not here. Okay, that's okay. We will make it work. Oh, I got a handout for all of you that are here. Let me grab that real quick. All right, friends, for those of you that know me, I like handouts. I like to write on things. I like to see visual things on the screen, so you're going to get a little bit of all that today. This is basically a copy of the slides that you'll see today. So you can take notes next to each thing, because, slides don't include all the information that I'm going to go over. So you may want to write any little individual nuanced thing in there. And I'm also going to make, after this is over, I'm going to make available all of the notes. So everything I'm saying here, you can have my script if you would like. And I think it would be helpful, because I'm going to give some ideas on what you could do for certain aspects of things. And you may not remember them all or write them all down, and that's okay. I can give you this, and you can take all the ideas and all that. I'm also in the process of, if anybody else comes in, just let me know, and I'll grab that. I'm also in the process of creating a number of handouts for you guys. Many times last week, I talked about, we're going to give you lots of ideas for this, or we're going to give you options and things for this. Well, we're putting together a handout of all of those things. So there'll be things like options for how your group prays. So you'll have like 10 options on, popcorn-style prayer. Maybe you have a leader who's going to be the one that recruits people that pray each week. Maybe each person will take a turn praying. I mean, different ideas on how you might operate, just to give you those out there and maybe suggestions for how you throw that out to your group. But I think more importantly, it'll be story sharing time and sharing your faith together. You'll have 10 different options we're going to share with you on how we might do that too, because that's really going to depend a lot on your group, on how they interact together, on their willingness to share or their lack thereof. Some people are more shy and less outgoing, and it becomes a struggle then. So we'll share different ideas for different groups on how you might share your stories together. So we're putting together that form as well that we'll get to you soon. It's just not completed yet, and we'll get in that. All right. Becca, do we have any connections online yet? Okay. I was wasting a little time hoping we might get somebody online, but that's okay. We'll kind of begin. All right, well, welcome, guys. Thanks so much for being here. I know I'm going to boom at you. I'm sorry. I apologize about that, but it's just the nature of our recording and making sure we get this good as a video and for our folks online. But thanks for being here. Thank you for your consideration at serving as a life group leader. I know you haven't fully made that commitment yet and that decision. And hopefully after this training, you'll have a better idea of what a life group leader does and how it's different than maybe your normal small group leader that you may have experience with in the past. Because it is a different thing that we're trying to accomplish here. As I said in the past and in the last meeting, our purpose really is intentionality of relationship. And so a lot of this training is going to have to do with interpersonal skills, how we lead teams and lead groups, how we navigate conversation together, and those kinds of things. Because a lot of listening is necessary as you adapt to how your group and who is in your group, I should say. Let's start with a word of prayer before we jump into this training. And then I'll give you some instruction on what we're going to do today and what I would like to do in a future meeting before things kick off. So let's go to God in prayer first. Holy Spirit, descend on this place, on these people, us, as we seek to be your connection builders, your relationship builders, your community builders. Be with us as we seek to bring your people together, to grow together in relationship, so that we can grow in worship, faith, and service together. Lord, be with us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, again, thank you guys for being here. There's so few of us. I'm going to go ahead and I would like us to go around, and I want you to share your name, and I want you to share your favorite movie. Be thinking now, because this is a tough question. Your favorite movie, and let's go your favorite pizza. Movie, pizza, name. Can we do that? Awesome. So my name's Adam. My favorite movie currently is the new Top Gun movie. Has anybody seen the new Top Gun movie? Awesome. Great. Great movie. Just came out on video. You can rent it. And then my favorite pizza, I like everything on pizza. So whatever you can put on a pizza, as long as it piles up, great. That's my favorite. Becky, what about you?
My favorite movie is Grease, because I can sing along with it and dance. And I always aspired to get into that outfit that Olivia Newton-John did, but it'll never happen. I had 4 kids. And my favorite pizza, it's a personal from Round Table, light on the sauce, grilled chicken, and black olives.
I'm hungry.
Wow. Brad Prawn. And favorite movie? I like all the James Bond movies.
Oh.
I've always wanted to be, 007.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. And my favorite pizza is almost like yours, which is grilled chicken, black olive, pineapple, pepperoni, light on the sauce.
Ooh, you had me until the pineapple. I lost it there. That's definitely a personal preference.
My name is Tanya Church. My favorite movie is Pretty Woman, and the favorite pizza is the Round Table Hawaiian Special.
Oh, another Hawaiian?
Bacon, pineapple, green onion, Maui Zowie.
Wow, I can't believe the whole Hawaiian thing. I love Hawaii, but the pineapple on a pizza? Sorry. Kathy.
I'm Kathy Takamoto. My favorite pizza is actually from Red Boy, the vegetarian light cheese. Oh, come on, it's good. I'm going to bring one to your house. And my favorite movie is, I don't know if many people know this movie, it's called Night and Day with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz. I just think there's some hilarious lines in that movie. Like the plane is going to crash, and she says, "Are we crashing?" He goes, "Oh no, we're just in a rapid descent."
I do know that movie. It's a good movie.
I'm James Wood, and my favorite movie is Gigi, the musical,
Oh.
and because I like Maurice Chevalier, and think it's a nice story. And
Pizza.
pizza, a wood-fired thin crust with mushrooms.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bruce Staley. My favorite movie, and I can't believe none of you said this so far, is Sleepless in Seattle. Meg Ryan. Oh my gosh. Still in love with her. And my favorite pizza is that Hawaiian Maui Zowie. Yeah, we loved it.
Wow, so it's going to be that kind of group. Okay. Audrey.
Hi, I'm Audrey Boland, and my favorite pizza is from Zachary, their thick crust pizza, any type. And my favorite movie is Gone with the Wind.
Ooh, yes.
My name's Janalee Holmes. I like any musical, so all of those, Grease, Oklahoma, Gigi, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I even liked Elvis. I did see Elvis, and
Yeah.
I saw him in person, so I had to see that movie. I like sausage pizza.
Sausage. Nice and simple, but great. Italian sausage? Italian sausage, yes. Good job. Thank you guys so much for sharing. You see how easy it can be to get somebody to share just a little bit about themselves, to break the ice a little bit, to kind of get people to think and talk a little bit and share about themselves. Something like this is something that a lot of people will do at the beginning of all of their meetings, learning little bits about information about people. You know, it might be something like, how'd your week go this week? Or what was great this week? Or what was terrible this week? Could be anything. But a little bit of getting people out of their shells and getting people to think and to say, hey, this is a safe place to be and to share about myself, really does help contribute to the conversation that could follow later on and to that growing in relationship. And getting that off the ground really begins with you. Notice that I shared first. I didn't make somebody else go first. I shared first. And I shared a little bit about what was important to me and what wasn't, kind of to begin the vulnerability process. If I make myself vulnerable, other people around them are much more likely to do the same, to drop their guard a little bit and to share a little bit more. And that's part of what it takes to build a trusting relationship. It's actually paradoxical. You know, in order to build a trusting relationship, somebody has to drop their guard, but nobody wants to. Nobody wants to be vulnerable and to get down on that. It takes somebody to make that intentional effort. And if we want to think theologically about this, this is part of our priestly self-giving. We give of ourselves for the sake of the other people in our group. So we let our guard drop first to help invite people to be a part of this moment in this group together. So that's just a little piece, and why I know people don't like team building oftentimes and think it's a waste of time or little group games or things like that, but often that's the purpose behind them. It's to begin that process so that you're much more and closer to building a relationship together. All right, we're going to go to slide 2 here. Is this slide 2? Making disciples, good. Intro, the last command Jesus gives his followers was go and make disciples of all nations. Change the world. Take the message everywhere. Change the world in the same way that I changed your life, in other words. It's easy for us to jump into the idea of big solutions, big campaigns, strategic planning stuff, which we are engaging in. All these complex marketing strategies and all that stuff. But is that the way that Jesus modeled discipleship? The answer is no. No. He mentions discipleship in community. And he develops disciples in community. He called 12 people to follow him. He said, follow me. Do things the way that I do them. Watch me. Pass the faith one small group at a time. Change the world one small group at a time. Fulfill Jesus' mission one small group at a time. You're getting a sense here, right? It's not about all the big magnanimous things we do. It's about the little things we do with the people around us that make all the difference in the world. That's what Jesus modeled and showed us. What do we do? What we do for a few will always have more potential than what we do for many. What we do for a few people will make all the difference in the world. Jesus made it clear that our love for one another would send a clear and compelling message to the world. But love is not something we do from a distance. It's something we do in relationship, close with people. It's not love far away. It's love close up and intentional. The way we connect to one another, the way we cultivate community, the way we love. Meaningful, trusting relationships give heart and soul to the gospel message that might not otherwise be heard, might fall on deaf ears. It's in relationship that the gospel actually begins to take shape. But these kind of meaningful relationships aren't arbitrary or fleeting. They require intentional investment and mutual self-giving in order to make them happen. Intentionally creating, investing in, and committing to being in small groups is an engine for discipleship. Small groups become the fuel for spreading the message of the gospel of Jesus around the world, one small group at a time. Small groups then become the focal point for building and growing authentic faith. Life group leaders. Is this slide 4? There we go. The life group leader does not take on, you're going to love this, an enormous challenge. Did you catch that? You don't take on an enormous challenge. You take on the challenge of leading small. That's facilitating and building of authentic community in small groups. That's really your purpose. That's your role. That's what you're going to be doing. And there are 4 primary tasks for a life group leader. Here they are. Be present. Create a safe place. We're going to talk about each of these individually, but make it personal. And then last, move them out. These are your 4 roles as a leader. Let's start with being present and what that's all about. The early church wasn't a place, wasn't an institution, was hardly decent and hardly in order. What people had in the early church was what? They didn't even have a Bible. They had each other. That's all they had. People in the early church had each other. A group of people changed by Jesus on this mission together to spread the gospel, to partner with Christ about building the kingdom of God on earth. And so when the group gathered, the church thrived. When they gathered, the larger community around them was changed too. They cared for one another because they loved one another. Not because they had to, but because they needed each other. Our job as a small group leader is simple: care, love, delight. Connecting the faith of the few in your group to a community is your goal. We do this by being present. So how do we be present? We show up predictably. This is part of being present. We show up predictably. What does that mean? Show up on time. If you're like me, on time is actually a little bit early. But it's not just physically on time, but being prepared. You're ready to go with whatever. Whatever you've planned out, you've planned in the process. Any group activities, games, things that you have going on to introduce each other, you have an idea of what you're going to do. Now, it may be options because you don't know your group perfectly well, but you know exactly the kinds of things that are going to be happening so that you are ready, you are physically present and ready to go. People need someone to know their names and know what's happening in their lives. You can't do this by yourself, but you can help create an environment in which people can be those things to each other. Make your group a place where each person can play a role in making a difference with each other. People want to make a difference. They want to have a purpose. And so if they're sitting in the background all the time, which some people will, but they don't invest in the same way as when they have a role. Find a role for people in your group. Begin developing a community where people get to know one another's names. You can begin with questions and encourage each other to share about their stories. Begin with icebreakers, kind of like our little question at the beginning. It's a good way an easy way to get to know people and get them out of their comfort zones a little bit. Show up mentally. Pray beforehand. Before your group gets there and you do anything else, pray for your group. Ready yourself for what you're going to be undertaking. Building community isn't just about these technical things I'm going to give you. It's about growing together spiritually and about being spiritually prepared too. So it's mentally prepared, spiritually prepared, and ready to intentionally invest in and to be about relationships together. You want to be ready for that. And it's not enough to say I'm ready. Bring God into the conversation. Early on, bring God before people are even there. This means also being fully present with the group, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, before and after any and all events. Have your lessons ready to go. Create a comfortable, hospitable environment for your gatherings. Make sure the message people receive when they show up is, I'm expected. I'm welcome. I belong here. That's the message that with all your preparations you want to present. That could be your physical setup, your mental preparations, whatever it is. Maybe have your phones turned off. Invite people to turn their phones off for the time together. A distraction, right? That could bring people back to another place, another connection, but not that one. Maybe have people turn their phones off. Lean in to listen to people. Don't be ready to make your next point. Now, this is important for life group leaders. You may have an agenda set up. You want to get from here to here to here to here, but the group may go a different direction. They may veer off to right field. Don't stop listening. Let them go. Let them go for the time being and lean in to listen. And it might be helpful to move them back eventually, but maybe not. Maybe God is leading your group other directions. So lean in to listen. Listen for what your group is saying and where they want to go in their conversations. You can tell this is different than teaching. This is different than teaching a class where you have a set curriculum and you're going here. That's not the case necessarily. You're growing in relationship and you're going where the group is going, and you help facilitate that, but that doesn't mean that you put them on a linear path to get there. So you get to help guide and direct and rein in, maybe ask questions, and we'll talk a little bit about down the line, to help clarify things, to open up conversation more, maybe to open up conversation in a spiritual manner, to bring in faith into the conversation. You know, if so-and-so could say, you know, I went on this trip and it was just so relaxing. It brought me back to reality, and I got so rested and was ready to take on the world. And you might ask that question, you know, was it like Sabbath time for you? Was it something that connected you to God and helped drop your guard a little bit so that you could clearly see your mission? I'm going way into this. But was it a Sabbath moment for you? And maybe say more about that. Share with the group what that meant to you. So clarifying questions, probing questions, questions that you can listen to or bring up as you're leaning in to listen with folks are the kinds of things that you're trying to do. You're trying to be an active listener and also bring in faith into the conversation. But not just your implementation of faith. You want them to share about how their faith is playing into their stories too. And we'll talk more about that here in just a few minutes. So don't be determined to get through a lesson or a curriculum or your pre-planned activity or whatever it might be. You don't want to miss the time for a moment of encouragement or let silence sink in or a moment for somebody else to speak or a moment to just say, hey, we need to stop for a minute. Why don't we pray for John, who just shared this very difficult time there? Let's pray and pray together. Don't waste those moments. Those are the moments that you want to foster as a life group leader. All right, so we're showing up physically, we're showing up mentally. Now we want to show up randomly. This is an important piece too. Meaningful relationships are tied to regular meeting times. As a leader, it's important to connect with your group even outside of your meetings. And maybe it's just a little call. Or how many of you have ever been on the receiving end of Carol DeQuisto's cards? She sends so many cards out, it's a miracle. I don't know how she does it. Maybe it's a little card once in a while. every other month or something. Maybe it's a call where you connect with somebody. Maybe you stop at their workplace even if you want to. Or maybe it's not even you. Maybe you encourage somebody else to connect in your group with somebody else in your group. Hey, you guys work next door to each other. Maybe y'all should have lunch together. Something like that. Build a connection, build a bridge, and show up randomly and encourage others to show up randomly as well, because it connects everything that you're doing in your life group together. It gives it substance. It gives it more than just a meeting time. It gives it a sense of this is what life is about. This is very important. Nothing has to be big. A small act of kindness can go a long way. All right, so that's be present, and that's a really important piece. The second one we're going to talk about is creating a safe place. This one, I think, is one of the most important things, because this is where make or break, do it wrong, and people leave. If people don't feel safe when they show up, and we'll talk a little bit about what safety is. It's not just physical safety, although if physical safety is an issue, we've got a problem. But it's also safe to share, safe to be there and present emotionally, safe to have their children there too. You know, not feeling uncomfortable that my kid is going crazy or something. That's also a level of safety as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about creating a safe place. Small groups, by their very nature, because they're relational and about relationships, are what? They're messy. All right? Relationships are messy. How many of you have the perfect marriage? I know, all of us will raise our hand, and you should. But I'll tell you what, there's nothing perfect about a marriage. There's nothing perfect about a friendship. There's nothing perfect about the relationship with you and your kids, or your grandkids, or your friends, or whoever it is. Relationships, we know, are messy. A lot of them fall apart sometimes, and we knit them back together, and they're hard work, too. Relationships, in and of themselves, are messy. So small groups, where we're building relationships, are messy. People bring their brokenness with them. They bring their baggage, hopes, dreams. They bring it all together, and they throw it at each other and say, ta-da, here I am. Welcome, welcome. How do we create a safe place where we're bringing all of our good stuff, our bad stuff, together in a place? Now, I don't mean everybody's going to share everything about their lives, but if you build a close-knit relationship with your group, there will be times where people bring up some very vulnerable things. They will bring up some very broken things in their lives. They will bring up some of the best things in their lives. How do we navigate those together? Because sometimes when that stuff comes up, your group will get uncomfortable. Some people in your group would say, oh, I don't know if we can talk about this. But your role as a life group leader will be to help say, hey, I'm so glad you brought that up, but maybe that's something for a private conversation later. Or maybe, oh, thank you for sharing your struggle. You know, I've struggled with this in my life. Again, a little bit of self-giving on your part in a similar manner. Never say you've experienced the same thing somebody else has, just FYI, all right? So you can say similar maybe, but say I've had another experience in my life. I know it's not like yours, but this is the time that I went through. And this is how I saw God shaping my life and working in me. And it may not be the greatest story or whatever, but a little bit of self-giving goes a long way to let other people say, oh, okay, it's okay for me to share a little bit of my baggage. It's okay to be and safe for me to be here and to share about myself and grow together. To have a transformational group means opening the doors of the barn to let the wildlife in and letting the mess happen. Community is messy, but messes can be incubators for miracles. In fact, they necessarily are. The more close and the more vulnerable we get, the more likely we are to encounter and see Christ working in our midst as a community and seeing Christ at work in other people's lives in different ways too. The moment you discover the community is messy will become the defining moment of your leadership as a life group leader. We can choose to do a few things. We can run from it. That would be my inclination, by the way. Run from it. We can ignore it. Some people are good at that. And pray that time and inertia will be our ally and maybe it'll just go away. Or we can lean in and wade into the mess and embrace the tension for what it is. Maybe it means pulling back for prayer and silence. Or maybe it means, like I said, a little bit of self-giving on your part. Or backing things away. It depends on the situation and requires that listening again. And this is one of the most challenging, I think, challenging tasks of a life group leader, to create a safe place and to still deal with the mess and to live in the tension of the brokenness in the room and the joy and the wonderful things in the room too. So how do we handle conflict? How do we handle difficult questions? How do we handle differences in personality and fears and impossible situations? You can demonstrate to the group that it's a safe place for a mess, a place where it's okay to not be okay. You can help communicate that with your group. Slide 11, please. Okay, thank you. Your objective is to create a safe place, free of judgment, free to express oneself. Did you catch that? Free of judgment, free to express oneself. This is hard because you're going to come into contact with things you just don't think that are right, or you think are theologically wrong, or personally wrong, or politically opposed to what you believe. So the question is, how do I navigate that? How do I leave room for that? How do I identify when maybe something becomes too toxic for the group, where it's just creating conflict that can't be resolved? Can I identify that and say, hey, as a leader, I think you bring up good points and this is a great topic of conversation. However, I think we need to back away from this topic today. I think this is something maybe we can process and come back and think about later. Or say, I get the sense that from the group that this is not a topic we want to talk about today. Let's move on to something else. John mentioned, I keep saying John, I don't know who I'm talking to. John, somebody. John mentioned this happened to him. I want to hear more about that. Has anybody else had an experience where they've confronted blah, blah, blah? You get the sense where you're trying to move the conversation to something that's going to be life-giving, but also it's about maintaining the safe place. You want to maintain that at all costs, because the minute it's uncomfortable for everybody over and over and over again, that's the time they don't want to come back. They don't feel safe. They can't build a trusting relationship with the group, and so they'll disembark and move on. So your objective is to create a safe place, free of judgment, free to express oneself. That's tension to manage right there. All right, how do we create the safe place? Here we go. 4 challenges a leader faces in leading the group. Challenge number 1, the expectation challenge. Everyone joins the group for a different reason. My pastor told me to. All right, they announced it in church, and I thought I'm going to check it out, see what this is about. Or you have the person that says, I really need this group. I need to be here because I don't have any friends, and I need friends. Whatever it might be, people are coming to these groups for different reasons. As a life group leader, you set the tone for expectations. Naming and managing expectations from the beginning is critical to the health of your group. Now, how many of you have ever set norms in a group before? You know what I'm talking about? All right, it sounds weird, norms. Be honest. These are some ideas of some norms you might have as a group. Be honest. What's said in the group stays in the group, so people aren't gossiping and sharing things down the line. You're helping set up expectations so that people have some boundaries and a comfortable place with which to share. We're not going to share anything out of here. We want to be honest. We won't make anybody talk if you don't want to. Can be part of it too. My favorite ones are, we're always going to have food. That's one of my favorite norms, by the way. We're always going to have food. We're always going to have fun. That's another one of my favorite norms too. So that those are always incorporated in anything that we do. Fun, food, honesty, whatever it might be. And we'll give you a list of some group norms that can be used with your group. But it's also fun as some initial activities with your group to talk with your group about, what are your expectations for the group? What do you want to see happen? And then also setting those norms together. I want this to be a safe place for you guys. How can we make this a safe place? And let them throw out ideas. Create a list of them that you can all keep track. Maybe they'll come up with some good ones too. We always want to have gummy bears. That's my youth kids always had. We always want gummy bears, or we always want pizza or whatever. And now, do you really want pizza, guys, or just food? Food's better. So you're helping to help create and manage expectations from the beginning, and this is important so that everybody has some safe footing to start your group on. The next challenge, the conversation challenge. Community is established in community, conversation, and dialogue. Conversation and dialogue have to happen. And this is where lives intermingle. This is where your stories begin to intermingle too. You will have long talkers. You will have hijackers. People that jump in and take over a conversation and are louder than everybody else, right? You're going to have rabbit chasers. I once had ice cream. Oh, that was so good. You know, they'll go off forever if you let them. How do you maybe rein things in from talking about bunny rabbits and ice cream or whatever it is, you know? No, you may have people that don't want to talk at all. People that are quiet and shy. They want to be there and they want to find a way to express themselves, but they're not comfortable doing it yet. You're going to have gossipers. Again, this goes back to setting those norms at the beginning. What stays in the group, or what's said in the group, stays in the group may be very important. So you want to establish a framework for what's inbounds in your conversations and what's out from the beginning, so you can help navigate the minefield of talking challenges. You know, you may want to say at the beginning, you know, our hope is that we can all participate in that. We know some of you may not feel as comfortable talking, but we want to be conscientious of not taking over conversations and making sure everybody has an opportunity to express themselves. So as a leader, mid-conversation, you might say, I love where this conversation's going. Does anybody who hasn't spoken yet want to share a little bit about this? I know it sounds cheesy and corny, but some people in your group, and I was one of them, I know this, would never talk unless they had that open invitation. I would stay in the distance where it's safe and comfortable, and I don't have to say anything in order to allow that. So you want to listen for that. Notice when somebody's taking over a conversation so that you can jump in and maybe help facilitate the incorporation of everybody else. All right, the leadership challenge. Dun, dun, dun. It's easy to get overwhelmed as a leader. Think about it. Your group is bringing their whole baggage and their lives into your group, and you are helping to navigate the tensions of all the things happening all at once in your group. People are going to expect you as the life group leader to have all of the answers in the Bible, in politics, in life, and they're going to lean on you. What do you think? What do you think, Becky? Becky, just give us the answer. You know, they're going to expect those things from you. It's hard not to. When somebody's a leader, that's kind of the expectations that we have. They're going to expect you to have the perfect life. They're going to expect to hear all of your problems and all of their problems, and you know how to fix it. This is important, and I love this. It's important to be comfortable saying, I don't know. I have no idea. But that's a great question. That's an interesting experience you've had. Has anybody else had a similar experience? Okay, so you're redirecting to your group. Let that build a conversation. It's okay to say, I don't have the answers. Or, let's give it a week. Let's let the group think about it. We can come back and talk about that later. There's no need to jump into something that you don't feel comfortable with, that you're not ready for, that you don't have the answers for. And it's okay to say, no. No, yeah. Yeah, it's okay to say, just that's how you're going to start your group off. You're going to say, between Adam and I, we have all the answers. And then when you don't have the answer, just be like, oh, Adam's got that one. Don't do that, by the way. I'm comfortable saying I don't know, too. The chemistry challenge. Here's another challenge you have. You'll have thinkers and feelers, internal processors and out loud thinkers, optimists and pessimists. You'll have Republicans, you'll have Democrats, you'll have evangelicals, you'll have Catholics, you'll have fundamentalists, and you're going to have them all in your group. These are not problems to solve. These are tensions to manage, okay? People are bringing themselves to this group. Establish a framework of shared values right from the start. Create those group norms I was talking about. Values of expectation, values of prioritization and preparation, values of engagement. Lead your group to value acceptance, confidentiality, and honesty. So those will all be norms in your group. You can consistently create a place of acceptance. You can do it by what? Here's a few things. Celebrating everyone equally. Everyone. Not just one or two, but celebrating everyone equally for different things, obviously. You can shut down gossip when you hear it. Just don't let it start. Don't let it happen. And the minute you hear it, put an end to it. There's no room for gossip, especially outside of these groups. You can privately address individual issues as they rise. Sometimes something may come up in a group that really and truly makes that group uncomfortable or may not be appropriate for that group. Be willing to take that person aside. Don't chastise or do anything or point people out during the meeting, but meet with them after or something. Go and approach that person and say, hey, I think this mention of this topic is probably not good for the group. You could see it created all this tension and these issues here. But I'd love to talk with you privately about this. Or if you would like to talk about this with somebody else, feel free to go see Pastor Adam and talk to him about it. I mean, don't do that very often. I won't be very happy if you do. But take an interest. Don't ignore it. Don't ignore someone or an issue that comes up. Talk to that person privately about it if it's something that needs to be happen that way. Letting people know that what is said in the group stays in the group frees people to be honest. So just throwing that out there. Honesty opens up the possibility for transformation. If you can't be honest, it's hard to really build those deeper connections that we're looking to build, that deep relationship. Honesty has to be important, and so that not sharing outside of the group becomes important. It's not that we're trying to keep secrets. It really is, though, that we can be vulnerable with each other and not worry about it leaving that room. So honesty opens up the possibility for transformation, to share the real struggles and joys that people are navigating through, not the false facade that we like to put on, but the deeper, real struggles that we all have. All right, respect the process. Slide number 18. Spiritual growth is not linear. You will not follow this Bible study from beginning to end and all of a sudden be the professional Christian at the end. And the same is true with any class or anything else that you do. Spiritual growth is not a linear process. If your faith journey is like mine, it's 1 step forward, 10 steps sideways, 4 steps back, and then 3 steps forward again. So it looks a little bit like this as my journey of faith. As I think I come to the answers, I realize I have more questions and get pushed off over here and move. It's all over the place. Spiritual growth is not linear. Community is created in a jumbled mess. So there's no checklist, no finish line, no clear marker that you have created authentic community. Instead, authentic faith in community is a process. It's created by 3 things: time together, life experience, and reflection. Those are the 3 things you're doing in your group. You're making the commitment to be together. To me, this is the top priority. This is the hardest, one of the hardest things to do in today's world. Because how many of us, even when we heard about life groups, thought, what's the purpose of this? What's the point? The point really and truly is time together. And it's hard. Time together is hard, but it's necessary for building authentic community. And so we want to make and teach our people, our group, that we are giving of ourselves. This is part of our sacrificial giving, bearing our cross to be together. This is part of our self-giving as Christians to be together. So time together, life experience, open, honest life experience, but also reflection. And this is important too. This is where God comes in. Because sometimes sharing our life experience doesn't necessarily come through the lens of Christ or through our lens of our faith. Sometimes we might just talk about the crappy day we had at work. Okay, well, where's God's movement in that? Or where could and how could God be working in that coworker that I just don't like and I can't work with? How do we bring faith into the conversation? That's where reflection comes in and is an important part of this. Life experience and reflection. We are called to make disciples, not find them. Make disciples. It takes time and energy and intention and even hard work sometimes. And it's different for everyone. It's different for every group how that happens. All right, here's another thing you need to expect as life group leaders. Expect difficult questions. Why is Jesus so narrow-minded as to claim to be the only way to God? Wow. What about those devoted to other religions? What about those folks? Doesn't God love them too? If Sunday is a day of rest, where does football fit in? Is the creation story literal or figurative? Isn't homosexuality a sin? Hard questions. If people are open and honest in your groups, these hard questions will probably come up. And remember, your job as the leader is not to give answers, to say, here is the right, exact way you need to think about this. It's to create and open up conversation about it. Maintain a safe place free of judgment. It's about relationship building in this context. There's other contexts for dealing with questions about that. You can encourage those kinds of difficult theological questions to the pastor if you want to. That's okay. Or the men's Bible study group, or the women's Bible study group. Carol would love those questions in her class, I'm sure. If it's a youth kid, you can tell them that Emma's got the answers. Just send them to Emma. She'll love that, by the way. Oh, this is being recorded too. Emma, it's for you. Expect difficult questions and have a strategy on how you're going to deal with those. You're going to listen to them. You want to acknowledge them. Say that they're good questions. That's a great question. I really appreciate you asking that question. And I think it may not be one we're going to talk about here, but I want to encourage you to go ask so-and-so about that. Or maybe it is a good question. Maybe it's developing good and constructive conversation, and you get that sense, let it go. Let it go. You can always stop it if you need to stop it later on down the road. But expect those difficult questions so when they come up, you don't come off guard. You're ready to, in some way, to listen and to strategize on how you might deal with the ones you can't handle, that the group can't handle, and that may need to be deferred somewhere else, or that how you would navigate talking about those if they come up too. We have to learn to validate those questions. So that's important. Even if we disagree with them, how do we make sure we maintain that safe place? So validate the questions. Questions don't need to have correct answers. You don't have to have all the right answers. Considering offering validating comments, like I said, that's a great question. What does everyone else think about that? Has anyone else ever wrestled with that too? These kinds of questions. All right, you are a tour guide as a life group leader. Anybody been a tour guide before? Okay, I haven't either, but I love this example. You are a tour guide as a leader on a journey of discovery with your group. You may have been on this path before, but now you're doing it with other people. And the journey and the road travel is going to become different because it was somebody else. So if you traveled with somebody you didn't know, that vacation, wherever you went, would be very different from if it was just you and your family and you had that game plan moving forward. You're going to be moving this way. Somebody's going to want to go see the dinosaur footprints in the mud somewhere. Somebody's going to do that. You're going to be going all sorts of different directions. As a life group leader, one of the most powerful things you can do is not teach, but it's to ask questions. This is your superpower as a life group leader, is to not teach, but to ask questions. Because here's why. Questions are more memorable, more stretching, and more transforming than teaching. It also shares the answers and the conversation with the group. It becomes more than just about what you think. It becomes about what the group is thinking and how the group is interacting together. Question ideas. Where do you see God most at work in your life today, or this week, or this month, or this year, or whatever it might be? Because it's going to change every day. It's going to change every week as you think about how God's moving. What is the biggest challenge you are facing right now? It can be a very big and important question to people. People often want to share their challenges, their struggles. They want to share it with somebody, and maybe some people don't have that somebody to share them with. What fruit of the Spirit is most abundant right now, or what's least abundant? If you knew, I love this one, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you attempt? I love this question because it gets people to dream a little bit, to share their hope with the group, to share what they're passionate about. And that stuff leads us in all sorts of life-giving directions and to a lot of good conversation. Slide 21, this is important. Guard your heart. As a life group leader, as you journey with your group, you will hear people's deepest struggles, fears, hopes, dreams, all those things I talked about. These emotionally heavy things can weigh on you, and they can weigh on the rest of the group. Anxiety from one person seems to spread from one to the other. So lingering on difficult topics is probably not something that you want to do as a group for a long period of time. It's important to give it voice, but you'll get a sense of where the group is. Listen to your group. Is the conversation dying away? Are people not as willing to share anymore? That might be time to smooth things around. Move to a different initiative. Ask another question. Probe somewhere else. Look for something life-giving and move it on. All right, your role is not to fix or to clean up. That's the role of the Holy Spirit. So don't bear all the weight, and encourage your people not to bear the weight of the conversations and struggles of others too. Your role is to continue to create a safe place where people are accepted, valued, and loved. That's your role. So do this. To do this, consider what questions do I need to ask to ensure I have a complete picture about what's being talked about. Does this need to be addressed inside the group or maybe one-on-one, as I've talked about earlier? Does someone need care I can't offer? Do they need a therapist? Do they need a doctor? Because some things are going to come up where it's too much and it's not enough for this group. Somebody may need professional help. How do I pull somebody off to the side later on after group or before saying, hey, I see this therapist has really helped me in my life. Or so-and-so sees a therapist and it's just transformed how they see themselves. Like somebody you can tell is wrestling with depression. And I mean depression to the point where just being part of this group is not going to mitigate that. It's not going to help. They really need somebody in their life that they can talk with. That's somebody you need to identify and pull aside. And if it's not somebody you're comfortable talking with, then recommend a somebody for them. Recommend therapy for them. If you're not comfortable with that, talk to your pastor. Talk to your deacon. Talk to somebody about that so that we have an update and I can make a visit with that person and say, hey, I'm just checking in on you, whatever it is. But those are the kinds of things you want to note in your group members. Man, this person is really struggling, and I really think the pastor needs to know about this, or I really think a deacon contact might be great. Put a little check mark, note that down and send an email or a phone call out and let us know that. But also vice versa. Man, this person is super passionate about feeding people. Well, how can I connect them to something in the church where we're feeding people? We're collecting groceries all the time, or we're making this and that. How do I connect that person to this ministry? How do I do that? Pull them aside and say, hey, I love that you're about this. We have this ministry here. It's on Tuesdays. Would you show up and maybe help put together a sandwich? Whatever it is. I'm just making this up. But identifying those people, listening to your group and identifying the things you can't address that maybe they need help for or they need connection with. All right. Does someone need care I can't offer? How do we all find an opportunity to grow in and through this? And above all else, how do we ensure that we feel loved, valued, respected, and wanted when people are talking about their struggles? Don't ever hesitate to ask for help. All right? If you can't handle something or think you can't, or something seems over your head, don't be afraid to reach out to the pastor. Don't be afraid to reach out to the deacons. Don't be afraid to reach out when we have this person, our life group director, who will be kind of heading up and leading this program. Slide 22, make it personal. Make it personal. This is our third aspect of being a leader. And the rest of these will go pretty fast here. We'll be done right about on time. All right, here's the thing. You are not the resident theologian. You are not the pastor in the church. And maybe you're not a deacon, and maybe you're not an elder. You are a life group leader. We need like a catchy theme song or something. Like, dun, 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 dun. I don't know. Come up with one. We'll come up with one. It'll be fantastic. But you are a life group leader. So don't think you need a theology degree. Don't think you need a leadership certificate. And don't think you need really anything else. You don't have to have all the answers to questions. You don't have to know your Bible, all the ins and outs of it. And you don't have to walk on water. So take the pressure off of yourself as a life group leader. Instead, you are offering an invitation to do life together with your group. That's it. You want to be authentically you in your group together. Take that pressure off of yourself. Instead, you are offering an invitation to do life with your group, to stumble around, to learn, to fall, to question, to celebrate, to grow together in faith. Be authentically yourself, no more, no less. Show others how your faith impacts your own life and in how you interact with the group. If you want your group to have healthy relationships, they need to see it in you. They're looking at you, whether you want them to or not. So don't put on a false facade. Be you. If you're grumpy, you're grumpy. If you're angry, you're angry. No, I'm just kidding. Create a safe place too, right? But be yourself. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Be authentically you when it comes up in conversation. I know I wrestle with road rage. I will talk about that. I won't hide that. It's an issue. I know it's an issue, and I probably need therapy for it. But I'm not afraid to talk about that. Share those kinds of experiences of yourself too. If you want your group to set boundaries, they need to see it in you too. So if gossiping kicks up, put an end to it. They need to see that, oh, okay, we're not supposed to do that. If you catch something going on, make sure people stay within their boundaries, and you too stay within those boundaries. They're looking at you after all. If you want your group to be confident in who God made them to be, they need to see it in you. They want to see your faith on display. They want to hear you talk about God and share your spirituality. Because sometimes it takes them to hear somebody talking about how God's working in them before they can even think theologically, before they can even think in terms of faith. It's not natural for a lot of us. It's hard. And so talking about your relationships, talking about your life in terms of how God is at work is really going to open up and make it permissible for your group to do the same, to have those same kind of conversations. If you want to see your group pursue their relationship with Jesus in prayer, in scripture, and togetherness and community, they need to see it with you. And they're going to see it when you show up on time. And they're going to see it when you're there present with your group. They're going to see it when you heard something in your group, and then later at the end, maybe you prayed for that exact thing you heard, that struggle somebody's going through. Because it says, I listened to them. I heard them. They matter to me. So that listening becomes all important. Show them, reflect how you've listened, how you are bringing into conversation God within all of their stories. Link them together. Make it all God's story. It's not as easy as it sounds, but it shows the value of each person and the value of the group. Set priorities in your group, spiritual priorities. Take the shape and the form of habits and daily disciplines and practices. Encourage your group. Read the Bible. Talk to God. Believe it or not, even though I'm a road rager, I talk to God in the car all the time. In fact, I ask for forgiveness in the car all the time. Share your faith. Don't be afraid to share your faith. Share the gospel according to your story. Be generous. Be generous. Showing up and being there is being generous with your time. Valuing those people just by being there is huge. Huge. Rest. Rest. It's a spiritual discipline that I'm terrible at sometimes. But rest is so important. Your group will learn from your spiritual priorities that you have in your own life. And even though they won't see your rest, they'll get a sense of it. It'll come up in conversation. They'll see you. Because when you're in community and you're in this place, authentic community, your lives get put on display to some extent. Set relational priorities as well. How do I interact? How do we interact together? What's important? That goes back to those group norms. Be real. Relationship is built on trust. Without trust, there is no relationship. Without trust, without honesty, there's no trust. So you have to be honest. Be yourself. A life group leader is not playing a role, but being the person that God called them to be. Be real about your struggles, your faith, your fears, your joys. Show others that your Sunday life is the same as your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday life. There is no distinction. You are you 7 days a week. Be you, authentically you in your faith. And last but not least, this is our number 4 of what we're called to do as life group leaders. Move them out. The final command that Jesus gives his disciples is go. Get out of here. Do your thing. Or more accurately, do my thing. And do it well and faithfully. Go. Change. Move. Take action. That's also what our life groups are about too. Because we are, in a sense, just being the church as a group. That's what we are. We're little microcosms, you heard me say it last time, of the church. No matter how tight your community becomes, no matter how much you love one another, no matter how much you've grown during your time together, no matter how much you can't imagine ever changing, don't get comfortable, compliant, and settle. There is more. Get ready to move, whatever that form might take. As a leader, we're going to be constantly asking this question: what's the next step? What's next? We're making disciples after all. There's nothing static about that. We're growing, we're learning, we're moving all the time. You're going to be asking the question, what's next? Where is God moving us together? Where might God be moving this group member individually? You might discover and discern that somebody else in your group is an amazing leader and could be the best life group leader ever. And maybe it's time to say, hey, I love you and you're doing great and we love you in this group, but have you ever thought about leading a life group? Because you are so good at it. You have such gifts for serving in that way. Or maybe you discern somebody else that they can't help but use their hands and feet to serve Jesus doing mission work. You know, Regina Russ, I love her to death. She's got to be doing something missional. I mean, she loves it. It's like a passion she can't pull away from. If she hears about something new, she's like, I'm getting into that too. She'll be doing like 20 things, picking them up. Now, she has to work on boundaries. Regina, I love you a little bit. But at the same time, that's her gift. That's her calling. That's where God's moving her. How, as a leader, can I encourage her towards that? If it's somebody in my group that's not connected in the church at all, but man, they are into Christian education, they want to teach this class I've been praying about, how can I connect them into that? Where can I lead them? Can I talk to Carol? Can I talk to the pastor? Can I talk to the CE elders? How can I move that person into living out their call? You're always looking for what's next for individuals in your group, as well as for the group itself. You know, there may come a time in your group where you realize, you know, our conversations are great. We love each other. They're deep, but maybe it's time that we move. I think people need some new connections. They need other people to talk with. And we've been together for, a certain length of time, and maybe it's not feeding that need of the group anymore, and they need to move on. And that's something to identify as a leader too. And that's a tough thing. And granted, these groups are only going to be temporary anyway. There is a definite ending point for these groups. So we probably won't have to worry about this one as much. But if we ever do longer term groups, like a widows group like I talked about in the past, or something else, and it becomes apparent that this group is meeting and they're great, but we get the sense that, you know, I think we may all benefit, or a bunch of our group may benefit from moving on and bonding with some other people within the church. We might make that recommendation. You know, we might talk to the group about, here's what I'm feeling about this, and here are the reasons why. And it's not because I don't love you guys, it's because we're always trying to grow as Christians. And I think we can get to know other people in the life of our church, and it might be best to do that by forming another group. And it may be something we talk to the life group director about, and we move on. So these are the things you listen for. I'm not saying this is going to happen for sure, but you're always listening for what's going on in your group. Things always come to an end too. This is important to note as a life group leader. These aren't forever groups. These are groups that are going to meet for a season and then eventually move on into different groups together. And that's something to also put as expectations at the beginning for your group, so they know that there is an end date to how these go. I know people do like these long-term groups, and there's a lot of benefit to long-term groups as well. And for now, that's not what we're going to be doing, but it may be something later on as we kind of evaluate this. So there's always more. Be on the lookout for what's next for your group. Where is God moving us together? Where is God moving individuals within my group? What's the next step? One of the primary roles of the life group leader, as we talked about, is moving people out. Move them to someone else, maybe. Always be on the lookout for people who could be those life group leaders. When you identify them, talk to them about it. Pray with them about it. Talk to your community of life director about it. Point them toward the training events that are coming up. Move your group to be the church. This is important. Move them to be the church. Move folks in your group from going to group to being a group. Give them a role to play. Everybody plays a role in these groups, whatever that might be. Give them responsibility. Make it impossible for them to miss without being missed. If they get a call saying, oh my gosh, we missed you so much at group yesterday, that makes all the difference in the world for some people. You know, to say, oh my gosh, they knew I wasn't there. They missed me. Move people from being consumers to contributors. Responsibility and relationship keep people engaged. If we're always consuming all the time, we're not investing, not fully investing of ourselves. Move people then from being just consumers to also contributing, to being a part of what's going on. It could be even little roles like they pray once in a while or whatever it might be. Note the gifts of your group members. Who could be a food coordinator if you decide to go that route, if you want somebody to coordinate your food? Who could be an event planner if your group wants to go to a Cubs game Giants game. Forgot where I was there for a minute. Although, if your group's going to a Cubs game, I'm coming with you. I want the invite. Sounds like a great trip. I'm not even a Cubs fan, but anyway. All right, so note the gifts of your group. You know, maybe somebody in your group wants to help facilitate group discussion. Maybe somebody's great at that, and you discern, you know, you're really good at moderating and moving the group and facilitating questions. You know, do you want to help me with that? You want to be a part of that with me? We can collaborate together. It's okay to do that as well. All right, slide 28. Move folks from reading and thinking about the Bible to living out the Bible. Connect your group to mission and service projects at PCN. Do them together, in fact. If there's something going on like a church cleanup and you're going to do it, invite your group to come with you. That would be great. Hey, I'm going to be at the church on Saturday at blah, blah, blah. Come on out, help me out. We'd love to have you. How might your group share your faith with the community around you? Random acts of kindness might be something your group has as a group norm. Maybe you go out and you do some, I know our youth group, we used to go out to the downtown area in St. Augustine. We used to hand out $5 McDonald's gift cards just to some of the homeless folks that we were regulars and that we knew well. And we loved doing that as a group. It wasn't really a super organized thing. We'd just be like, hey, random acts of kindness, let's go do it. Let's go do some nice things for some people. Maybe somebody in the church, you know, the prayer blanket ministry may have somebody that they're giving a prayer blanket that is in our group. Let's all go take the prayer blanket to this person in our group together. Let's go share that. There could be a myriad of things that you do, but be the church together. Be the church, which includes this idea of being servants together. Move your church, move your group to be caregivers, which means encourage your group to check in on each other. When you make those random calls and you connect randomly with your group, they're going to see that, and they're going to want to do that too, and you're going to encourage that in your group as well. Check in on your group. Encourage people to check in on one another. If you are living close by, what a great opportunity to go say hello at somebody's home. Or if your workplace is right next to where somebody lives, what a great opportunity to go eat lunch with that person. How awesome could that be? So check in on one another. Share your health struggles. Don't be afraid to share your health struggles. And I'll tell you, these will come up in your conversations. Inevitably, these will come up because these are the pressing concerns for a lot of people. Or what's going on with my health? It just is. Especially where many of our members are in their life. It's going to come up. So you're going to hear and share about struggles together. Celebrate your birthdays. When somebody has a birthday, sing happy birthday. Make sure there's some kind of dessert. Whether it's fruit or something healthy, you can go that route if you want. And I know we have health concerns to think about in our group. That's something you want to take note of, by the way. But celebrate birthdays. Celebrate promotions. Celebrate jobs, pray with people when they lose their job, these kinds of things. If a group mate needs a visit from the pastor or deacons, pass it along to that corresponding group. Take note of who needs this and who needs that. If somebody has transportation needs or needs outside of what your group can do, let's move on to the deacons, let's move on to the pastor and find out what else we can do. Always listen for those things that are beyond, therapists, doctors, professionals, because we'll want to know that too. So if you come to the pastor and say, this person's wrestling with this, and here's what I'm seeing, and I think they might need a professional therapist, or I think they might need a doctor. That'll help shape the conversation I have with that person and give me some clear clues so I can ask probing questions and get to the heart of that. It'll save me a lot of time and also help connect me better and be a better pastoral caregiver if I have more information to take on with me. The deacons do this now, and it's phenomenal how often I can get straight in to people's struggles and find ways to help them because I have a little bit more information to go on than just a cold conversation. So it's helpful as a life group leader, you're listening for those kinds of things. But you're encouraging your group to help share in the caregiving. The caregiving not just of the caregiving of the church in general. We are being the church in our group, which means we are being caregivers as a part of what we do. Also, move them to connect to the larger church at PCN. Now, I know in today's world, we're busy. We're all busy. A lot of us have millions of things going on. So this doesn't mean that everybody in your group needs to sign up for 10 more things in the life of the church. That's not what I mean. But it goes back and harkens back to that, man, this person's great at mission. Or, man, this person has a heart for teaching kids. It's listening for those things that people are passionate about and love and the fruits of the Spirit playing out in their lives. And you're trying to match them up with the ministries that you're hearing they're being called to. And they may not hear it yet. They need that voice to affirm that this is, oh my gosh, you're right. I could be a good teacher, and I would love to explore that. Where do I go? Who do I connect you with? Listen for those kinds of things. So you're moving people to connect to the larger church towards where they might be feel called. And at the same time, you're also challenging people to do things they may never have tried before too. You're challenging your group to say, hey, maybe some of us have never done this service project. They've never done a cleaning at the church or a cleaning in the community. Let's all try it out. Let's go see what it's like and try it together. Now, I see that together part. Sometimes doing these little service things and connecting people to other pieces in the church, even though we don't know if they might be called to that, it might be a place where God lays on their heart that, man, you are called to be here. You got gifts for this. You could be great at this. We're both affirming people's gifts, but we're also challenging people to try new things, challenging our group to try things that they've never tried before. You all need to be in the bell choir. No, don't do that. But there we go, gentlemen. Make the offer, Yay, awesome. Make the offer, say, hey, the bell choir's starting up, and I have no musical talent whatsoever, but has anybody ever thought about joining that up? Bring that up in conversation, Oh, all right, let's pray together. We will all be great bell choir. Yeah, no, listen for those things. That might come up, say, I've considered doing this. Oh, can I pray with you about that? Never hesitate to pray with your group. Never stop things to pray. I know it sounds evangelical. I know it sounds a little too much, but bring God into the conversation anytime that you feel it's important. I know God's there all the time, but make it intentional. Make it real for your folks. Let them see that you're intentionally bringing God into the conversation with what you're doing. So move people to connect to the larger church. And it's not just about numbers. We really, truly want people to line up with where they feel God is calling them to be and to explore their faith a little bit. That's the reason behind it. All right, and then move them up to what's next. Growth opportunities. God is never done with us, and we are constantly growing in our lives of faith. This could mean that we connect our folks, and I've talked about this, mission trips, service projects, committee leadership, session leadership, connecting our folks to opportunities to serve and give and to go. This might mean working to connect our folks to those things they feel called to do with their gifts. I'm reiterating the same things I've already said. Every group eventually comes to an end too. And I've already talked about this as well. So have that expectation from the beginning that these groups will have a beginning and an end date. All right. Every group, okay. Friends, this is the majority of what I want to talk about life group leaders. This gives you an idea about what we're looking for in life group leaders. It's not being teachers. It's not being professionals in any way, shape, and form. There are 4 primary tasks that we talked about. Being present with your group, which is showing up, mentally, physically prepared, being ready to go. Creating a safe place in all of life's messiness, because we all bring our brokenness. Creating a safe place, which means expectations, group norms, setting them at the beginning. Facilitating conversation, pulling people aside, affirming questions and comments. All of this goes back to creating a safe place. Make it personal. Be genuinely you. Don't try to be somebody else. Be yourself. Share your struggles too. The group needs to see you being vulnerable as they are vulnerable. That's when we start connecting and building relationships together. And moving out. Move them out to connect with the church, to serve together as a community. Move them to be caregivers within their group as well. All of these things. Move them to connect with the larger church as well. These are a lot of your primary tasks as leaders. What I'm putting together next, and I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do next, and I'll do some questions. I know you guys probably have questions. First thing, I want to meet again, if we could. And here's why. I want to have another training meeting, but it's not going to be a typical training meeting. We are going to gather together as a life group. All of us are going to be a life group, and we are going to go through what a life group meeting could be. In this life group, I'm going to be your initial leader, all right? So I'm going to lead us through as if I was the leader in the group. And we're going to go through, a lot of this, let me move to the bottom of this. On this sheet as well, and I haven't finished it out yet, but there's all those things I was talking about before, options on how we might pray, 10 options on how we might recruit a leader to be whatever. There's lots of options for those. Get to know you games and icebreakers. I'm going to give a lot, 10 recommendations or ideas on how you might do that as well. You may have your own. You know, you don't have to use these lists. Sharing stories and asking our faith questions, which I talked about is going to be the meat of our meetings. That's where we're putting ourselves into conversation together. I'm going to give you a bunch of ideas on how we might do that too, from devotions to Bible studies to some of the questions I've already talked about. How is God working in your life, whatever it might be. I'm going to give you a bunch of options on how you might do that. And different groups are going to do different things because you're all different from each other. I'm going to talk a little bit about typical patterns for how the groups might meet. So schedule-wise, you might eat first, you might do this second, you might do this. I'll give you some options on how you might run your meetings, at least the order and agenda for how they might move. Again, everything is something you're going to negotiate and you're going to get a sense of as a leader. But I'm going to give you as much as I can in the form of this, and so you have a chance to look that over. And I will get you this before we meet again. So you'll have a chance to kind of look through it and come up maybe with some of your own ideas. I'll send you some website ideas, too, that give you all sorts of other ideas for how you might do these things, too. Some of it will be your personal preference, too, as a way that you lead these. So don't negate what you're good at and what you love to do, because that's going to play a role in what you do as well. So we're going to meet again after I've sent you all of these recommendations, and maybe you can put a mock meeting together. Maybe you can put your first meeting together. And we might work on that the next time too, on what it might look like, how you might meet, what you're looking to accomplish and all that. We'll meet together as a life group, and I'll run through this. I will have picked some of the things off of that list. We'll go through the meeting together, and I'll help model what that might look like. You're going to see that I'm going to stumble sometimes, and the conversation might go way over here when I didn't want it to go there at all. You might see all sorts of things, and know that that's okay. Because in these groups, even as a leader, when we're together, I'm not coming into it as a pastor. I'm coming into it as a life group leader. So I'm not here to teach, and you might ask me questions, theological questions. I'm not going to give you an answer. I'm going to let that conversation go. I'm going to turn it over to the group. I'm going to be a life group leader as part of this. And that's what I want to help model for you guys. So we're going to at least do one meeting of a life group meeting. And then we might have a follow-up meeting after that. It just depends on where you are and how you're feeling with what we're doing and if you're comfortable with it. And I will have you kind of set up what your first meeting might look like. If you were a life group leader in the next week, what would you do and how would you write it out? How would you put together your schedule for that particular meeting? Because there's certain things from the first meeting that you're going to want to establish, right? You're going to want food, so how's that going to happen? At least for the first meeting, first two meetings. You're going to have to meet somewhere. So how are you going to negotiate that with your group? For instance, you could throw it out to the group, hey guys, what are we going to do? Terrible idea. Open-ended, terrible idea. You're going to want to say, hey, I've got 3 ideas for how we're going to meet for our first meeting. Pick one. Because you want to help them gear them towards something that you know you can do. If it's open-ended, you may not come to a conversation. You don't know each other very well yet. You don't know what other people are thinking. They need options, and it's going to help them make a clear and conscious decision. So we'll talk a little bit about those first meetings too before we put that together. All right. So questions. This is our presentation for today, but questions from you guys about life group leaders and what it means to be a life group leader. Yeah, Brad.
This is getting a little bit farther ahead, but once we have these groups going for a while, is it the intent that these leaders will get back together for some sharing at certain points, mentorship?
We haven't talked about it yet. In my mind, my hope is that we have quarterly meetings to check in, just to make sure, here's how this is going. Here's my struggle with what's going on here. Or so-and-so won't stop saying and talking about this, whatever it might be. But it's a chance for the leaders to kind of debrief and to share a little bit about what's going on, their concern, their struggles, but also their great joys in their group. Oh my gosh, this person is such a great devotion leader. I can't believe it. They're just doing phenomenal. And long-term vision, my hope is that this would be run by the community life director, because this is the person that's going to hear these things and take your feedback and hear what's going on and say, oh my gosh, that person would be great on the mission committee. Oh my gosh, that person is really struggling with this. They need Pastor Adam. We're going to have him come in. Those are the kind of meetings where we can check in and make sure that we're solidifying and centralizing kind of the needs of our groups and making sure you guys are cared for as well, because it's a lot. It can be a lot if we put it a lot on ourselves, which we often do in big messy relationship groups that we're a part of. So that would be my vision, would be quarterly meetings, but we'll talk about that. Nothing's set for that yet, so that would be my answer. Others? Questions? Yeah, Bruce. Bring it.
I'm totally confused about how I get participants, to recruiting participants in my group. How does that happen?
Oh, you're going to love this, Bruce. You don't have to do a thing. So here's how we're going to start it. Now, this could change in the future, but for now, we are compiling a full list of people that want to participate in the program, kind of like dinner groups. We're putting a full list of people. We're going to put them all in a database. We're going to look at each of the leaders that we have that are willing and able to lead a group. Some of you guys had talked about maybe pairing up, which is okay. We could do that. It'll just change how many groups we have. And then we're going to look at your availability. So when are you available to lead a life group? This is going to be the most important piece. Because then we're going to try to match group people up with you guys based on availability. So if you're available, I'm sorry, go ahead, Becca, you got a clarifying? Okay. So Becca, for those, is anybody online, Becca? Okay, good. For those of you online, you may not have heard what Becca said. Becca said that we're going to wait and we're going to get confirmation of who wants to serve as life group leaders, and then we can begin forming the groups together. So the way we're going to do that, like I said, is we're going to have the full group. We're going to look at the leaders and their availability. Then we're going to look at all the people and their availability and try to match up people based on where they're available. So Bruce, if you're available on a Tuesday at 7 o'clock, whatever it is, we're going to try to match up other people that are available at Tuesday at 7 o'clock and put them in a group. And that'll be your group.
I can't tell you what a relief that is, Adam, because I've been going through lists of people trying to figure out how do I approach them and so forth. So this will all be done for us.
We're going to try to do it all to begin with. Now, we know this is not a perfect model, and we know it's not going to work out perfectly. This is just what we're going to start with. There are probably going to be things we modify down the road. We don't have to do a one model fits all. So some of them may be availability. We may do later on. Brad brought up a good idea about geographical. Some people live close by. Maybe that would be a good opportunity for that group to meet just because of proximity. Makes it a lot easier to find a gathering place and not travel up to Novato if you don't have to travel up to Novato. We may also look at a group for widows. We talked about maybe doing that somewhere down the line too. We're really going to listen. After this first time through, we're going to evaluate and say, okay, this is working, but we really still feel like we have a need for that widows group. We feel like that would meet a really good need for community, and we really want to make that happen. So we might rearrange things after this first try, but that's initially how we're gonna get it going. Becca's right. We're probably going to wait and make sure we know who the leaders are, and then we'll put the groups together. That does not mean you have to make that decision right now. If you know and you're for sure, great, that's great, but you don't necessarily have to know for sure right now. It does slow things down a little bit. But please, if you're praying about it and thinking about it in the next few weeks, if you could let us know, I think it would be helpful. And then we can go ahead and start putting those together sooner rather than later. We know, and the reason why, I know we're not kicking off till October 9th, but inevitably, we're going to put people in groups and somebody's schedule is going to change. It's not going to work. And we know there's going to be a level of rearrangement and moving people and trying to fit people in. And we may even form last minute groups because somebody's availability doesn't get in, but they want to be a part of the program. And so maybe there's somebody that steps in and says, hey, I will make a priority to make this work for this. So we know there's going to be a lot of rearranging and molding in the end. And we want to leave room for that as well. I told Becca this in one of our meetings that I might serve as a life group leader. Primarily, I'm not going to initially, but if there's a need for it, like people that can't meet with anybody else and they need that, then I would be happy to step in. And we might have others that would be willing to do the same. But that way, we still meet the need and everybody can be a part of a life group. We do have a few folks that are interested in Zoom only. I know we have some leaders. They're interested in Zoom groups only, so there will be opportunities for folks online to be part of a Zoom group rather than in person. And I'll say it's not my favorite, but if it's the only way that somebody can meet and it works, let's do it. I think that's phenomenal. I love the idea, though, of all eating our own food. And check out this pizza, guys. Just watch me take a bite, or I'm eating ice cream first, I do think that could be fun. That could be a lot of fun. Good questions. All right. Yeah, James.
I'm concerned about a group for 30, 40-year-olds. Do you have somebody who's going to be able to lead group people with younger kids?
So currently the way we set it up is we did not make groups specifically for age groups. That's another thing that came up. Being a parent of teenage kids, I would find a lot of benefit in being a part of a group with a bunch of other parents with teenage kids. I understand that. At this point, though, we're really trying to mix everybody up, and so it'll be a blend of a little bit of everything. And again, we'll reassess, and if that really we're determined that becomes a need. And something that would be helpful for our growing in connections as a church, we may go that way. So you'll have to let us know, though. We'll need your feedback. I'm oldest. And other people as well. We need their feedback, too. Yeah, Brad.
Just to add on to this, we have 3 daughters that probably feel that they would like to be part of the singles group. So we get to
Yeah, and this is one of the challenges, and I'm sure you guys realize this online as well, is, we're not a huge church, so we don't have every little demographic to fit everybody in. We're just, if we did like a singles group for folks, it would be a pretty little group. I mean, it wouldn't be very many. And we'd have some that really wouldn't have a critical mass, and we really do think you need a certain number of people to have a critical mass. Too small it becomes a different kind of meeting. It becomes almost like therapy or something. And we don't want it to become that. We really want it to be growing in connection. So it has to have a critical mass, but not too big. So we're trying to go for that number as well. Other questions? I know I've gone a little bit over. We did start a little bit late, but all right. Well, let me know if you guys do have any questions. Don't hesitate to give me a call. If you would like a copy of the presentation itself. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Jiddly. Go ahead. What's that? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't. I'm going to talk to you guys about that real quick. Here's this. Okay, perfect. And this is a copy of the slides, but if you would actually like the full script of everything I said, because I know it's got a lot more detailed information, I'm happy to send that to you too. So just let me know, and I will probably put on the tail end, I'll just send it to all of you, and on the tail end of that, I will put all of those ideas for how to pray, or ways that your group can pray, ways you can share stories, all that. I'll just tag that on at the end so that it's all one big document, and it'll give you kind of the same information that we went over. All right, and then, so Becky brought up a question. This is the last thing I want to talk about today, is when we set up our next time, when we meet to be a small group together. So I want to propose, and I don't know if this works for everybody else, I want to propose that we might do this on a Sunday after church again. That we just stay after church, same story, but this time maybe we meet in Christensen, and we'll have food, and we'll have a meal together, and we'll go for about an hour and a half, the same length about this one. By the way, I'll say this, you don't want your small life group meetings to go too long. If you're at your host house, if you're at a host house for 5 hours, that might be a little excessive. But if you love each other that much, you know what? You do it. But we'll do, maybe after church, right here in Christensen, hour and a half, we'll go through and do life group meeting. We'll do questions after that, and then I'll give you a little homework assignment, which is putting together your first meeting for how you might meet with your group the first time, and we'll call it quiz. So date-wise, I don't want to stretch this out too far, but I want to be comfortable with where you guys are at. Oh, I was going to say September 11th. Would anybody be available that day? I know it's September 11th, but you are? Okay. September 11th, it's church on Sunday, maybe? I heard a maybe. Let me see if that's... Sunday, the 11th or the 18th. Either of those would work fine for me.
I think I'd rather do the 11th, so if there's anything we have to, talk.
Plan phone.
We have that.
Okay, so let's tentatively say September 11th. After church, we'll eat lunch, and we'll do a life group meeting together, and we'll just go through that. We'll find a way, because I know some people are doing Zoom groups, and some of you online may be doing those Zoom groups. We will look for a way to do it online too, so that you guys can participate. I don't know which camera's on right now, but is it the middle one? All right, I'm looking at the middle one. I think I got you. But we'll look to stream it too, so that way it'll probably be on Zoom rather than YouTube, but that way you can also interact too, and we'll find a way to do that as well. So September 11th, right after church, we'll make that happen. Sound good? If anybody has a conflict, let me know, but you can also join on Zoom too if you want to see it. What's that? That's the plan. Yeah, we'll go an hour and a half. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. I hope you're getting an idea of kind of what we're looking for when we're thinking about life group leaders. You can tell it's different than teachers, it's different than pastors, it's different than some of the other positions that maybe we've recruited for before. But it really is, I think it's a life-giving, for a life group, a life-giving position. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming out. Thank you online and for joining us as well.